very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's watching us live. My name is Ruben Lobo, your talk show host on behalf of the DentistChannel.Online. We hope you all have been doing well and you're keeping safe in these unprecedented times of the COVID-19 pandemic. Very warm welcome once again to everyone who's joined us from various parts of India and from various parts of the globe. Namaste and warm greetings to you. Thank you so much for joining us to this session. Definitely, you've done the right choice. You've done the best decision of being a part of this today's particular talk show because of the wonderful guest that we have with us. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about a talk show guest for today, Dr. Agam Bhatnagar. Dr. Agam is a conservative dentist and an endodontist. He holds an intellectual property in the capacity of the lead inventor and is among the youngest in the endodontic fraternity to hold a patent. A university gold medalist with certificates of honor. He is a recipient of the Fellowship in Clinical Research from the Wilcare Academy and International Clinical Dental Research Organization and holds a proficiency certificate in laser dentistry by the Academy of Laser Dentistry in USA. He's an associate of the International Association of Student Clinicians, American Dental Association. He has been felicitated in the past for outstanding achievements by the International College of Dentists. He was converted with the coveted, highly commended Endodontist of the Year by the House of Family in Mumbai, 2 years in a row. He was also awarded the ICDRO Innovation Award at the ICDRO World Congress, which was held in Pune, India, for his pioneering work in endodontic research. He's a much sought after keynote speaker at national and international forums, including training of international student delegations from the University of North Texas, USA, and faculty of residence of the Bangladesh Armed Forces. He has contributed a book chapter to a leading textbook of endodontics, published internationally by Quintessence Publications, besides other journal publications. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Agam. It's such a pleasure to have you in this talk show. Once again,
Thank you.
good evening, Dr. Agam, and thank you for accepting a kind invitation. You've been kind enough to accept that invitation. Thank you, Dr. Agam.
Thank you, Robin. I absolutely love your energy, and I've been following some of the interviews that you've done in the past. I think what you're doing, especially in these COVID times, is absolutely fantastic, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agam. It's so likewise, and feeling is so mutual, So without much further ado, let's start with the session for today. Ladies and gentlemen, our session for today is on the topic dentistry's real pandemic, recovering from the COVID-19 misinformation. Dr. Agam, my first question to you is, how has your practice been now, in these times of the pandemic, when the pandemic came into effect?
I think it took us all by storm, and I think I speak for every single healthcare practitioner, barring the ones who are in emergency services. We never really thought that healthcare would be an industry where we would actually sit at home and wonder when we can actually get back to our practices. So I think it was something that was unprecedented. It was something that we certainly did not look forward to. And yes, we had to shut down the practice for almost 3-4 months, which was a call which we took, keeping in mind the safety of our patients, the safety of our staff and everybody. Of course, there was the Honorable Supreme Court's order to not do aerosol generating procedures. And as you would know, almost 80-90% of what we do, especially as an endodontist, it's all aerosol generating. So yeah, for the longest time, we were at home. We were watching Netflix. We were playing Scrabble. We were playing Carom. And we picked up a couple of hobbies. I think all of us became bakers or some of the other hidden talent that none of us knew about. And of course, I eventually invested that time into creating something, that logo you see back there, e-education. That's been my baby for the last few months now. It's been in the works for a very long time. But then I think the pandemic actually gave us the time to work on it. And here we are, finally back to work, and things are picking back up again, with, of course, a new normal, a different normal. And these are testing times, these are crazy times. But then I think if I had to go back and do it over again, minus the COVID part, no regrets. It's taught us a lot. It's changed a lot. But I would say for the better if you take it in the positive step.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agam. I think whatever you said is certainly true. We've seen so many bakers, poets, chefs, musicians, etc., oozing out from an individual. I think the COVID-19 break couldn't have been any better. We move to the next question. How, according to you, can a practitioner convey a message to the patients that dentistry is safe? Since patients are skeptical nowadays to get a treatment done.
I think it's more than words. It has to be in action. So I mean, if you and I say this a lot to everybody who ever listens to me. I mean, both people younger to me, people older to me. I think it's a universal messaging all across. It has to be in action. It cannot be in words. Which means if you are following your old habits, your own hand hygiene is you're wearing gloves, washing them, coming back to the next patient. People do that, and people observe that. You cannot possibly be doing that stuff. Then show the patient that you've made changes. For example, in my practice, we have a practice where the patient is given a gown, he's given a shoe cover, and these are not baseless changes that we've made. They are based upon solid evidence which was published in medical literature. We found out that the shoes of healthcare workers specifically can carry the COVID virus, or at least its particles, from one place to the other within the hospital. The same applies to patients. So we made sure shoe covers were a part of the giveaway to the patient. We started sanitizing the pen that a patient holds when he fills in a form. We try to move from the form filling to the digital version of it so that there is minimum contact. There's a red line in front of our reception desk. The patient is behind that red line when handing over whatever form that he's giving to the receptionist. All those little things, right from the first moment the patient steps in, all the way down to your dental chair where you're going to make those changes in the procedure itself. That is when patients get to know that it's safe. And I do believe there's nothing better than the word of mouth marketing. And that also applies to this safety message. Bring one patient into your practice and show him what you're doing. And then see the domino effect that happens. Every other patient would start wanting that, and every other patient would want to come to you only because they heard that you've taken all these precautions for them. So I think it has to be in action. It cannot be in words.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adam. I think it's definitely, certainly, and surely true to the fact that it should be in actions and not in words. We move to the next question. What, according to you, is the biggest myth with regards to practicing dentistry in these times that you would like to demystify now?
And I feel very strongly about this, Ruben, because we've been seeing this around a lot. I think the biggest myth that is there in the practitioner's head, and I know a good deal of practitioners who harbor this thought, is that dentist ko kuch nahi hoga. I think that false sense of safety, and I don't blame these people, because I mean, when you asked me what I would want to talk about, or what was one thing which was close to my heart, I said it would not be COVID, because I think everybody's spoken about COVID. I wanted to talk about COVID misinformation. And what I'm telling you here is exactly a fruit of that misinformation. So, at some point of time when the world was all crazy trying to understand the virus in the first place, when CDC and WHO were busy trying to understand the virology, of course, there were no reports of dentists dying or dentists getting the disease. There were no publications saying that so many dentists or such cluster of dentists ended up with COVID-19. Now, this absence of information was construed by many to sound like, dentists are not affected. Now that the world is moving towards the vaccine, we already know a lot about this virus. We know a fair deal how to handle it. Now you start seeing those reports. Karnataka published an official report. I think it was a few hundred dentists in the state who tested positive for COVID. I'm sure the real number is much more. There's a lot of underreporting as well. Now we start realizing that we actually have dentists, just like every other healthcare worker, being affected by the disease. So for us to say, hey, you know what, I'm safe because there's nothing published which says that a dentist will get it, I think is the biggest myth that you can possibly carry with you. You're putting not only yourself at risk, you're putting your staff, your patient, and practically your whole family at risk, only because we choose to be that ostrich, that puts the neck in the ground when the hunter's coming and saying the hunter's gone. We don't want that happening. I think that is the myth, that is the wrong belief that has to be busted out.
Thank you, Dr. Agam. Since we've not had any guests from the endodontics fraternity, can you tell us a few absolute do's and an absolute don'ts every endodontist should keep in mind during these times?
Rubber dam, rubber dam, rubber dam. I think if there's one message to an endodontist, I understand a prosthodontist or a maxillofacial surgeon not being versed with the rubber dam, and I urge them to learn that as well because it's not difficult. But if you are an endodontist and you've been trained for 3 years in the rubber dam, that is one thing that is your biggest shield when it comes to COVID-19, because it practically blocks off the entire throat and the entire saliva when you're operating. So it brings down your risk by almost 90-95%, even if that patient was an asymptomatic carrier. So I think an absolute do would be to use a rubber dam no matter what. You have a small restoration, use the dam. Don't say, you know what, choti si restoration hai, choti si filling hai. Let's not do that. No, I think it should be a universal precaution. And I think you should carry this forward even when the pandemic is over. You know, I always say this, look at the silver lining of things. Yes, the pandemic left us in a situation, left us in a place which is not very favorable. But the good thing which came out of it was that we actually woke up. So let that rubber dam be a wake-up call to you, just like your other disinfection practices. Just because COVID will soon be over does not mean that your disinfection or all those things about cleaning your chair and everything else that you were not doing in the past, but you're now doing out of fear, they shouldn't stop. So I think that's an absolute do. An absolute don't, I think, I really feel that one should take this seriously. So an absolute don't would be to be careless or to have that false sense of safety when one doesn't exist. So I think your guards should be up, no matter what the news tells you. And we know the news tells us a lot of things. Most of it is not true.
Thank you, Dr. Agam. Tell us a little bit about communication and why communicating is very, or rather, of the utmost importance now. I mean, of course, it's always been important, but now, since there's a lot of consent and everything that's taking place, tell us your views with regards to communication and communicating with the patient.
You know, Robin, I'll modify that and take you back 3 years, 4 years when I started this particular practice, the one that I'm currently in. We've been doing endo for a very long time, but my own private practice was about 4.5 years back. So there's this running joke in the family, Ruben, that when I talk to a patient in the first consult, I basically give him half a BDS degree. And if the patient is a little willing, I could also give him an MDS, because I spend 45 minutes to 50 minutes with my patient just talking, which means
Wow.
I will tell the patient what his disease is. I will tell the patient what the problem is. I will tell him the solution. I will show him videos of my previous cases. I will show him the outcomes. I will show him how the healing happens. And by the end of it, when I start showing my patient the second case, he already knows what enamel is and what dentine is and what the pulp canal is and a lot of those terminologies. Why am I giving you this story? At the end of all of this, God forbid, if there is a complication, I have already communicated that to the patient priorly. I have already taken the patient into confidence and told them that, listen, I'm going to try this. I can expect A, B, C. But if D, E, and F happen, it's possible, and we'll figure ways around it. So the whole A to Z of the risk assessment, of the outcome assessment, and what the patient can expect in reality has already been conveyed as well as documented. That's another important aspect, Write what you say what you write. That's extremely important. All that I've just told you was my practice pre-COVID. Post-COVID, this becomes equally important. So I'll give you an example. I got this message from a patient saying, hey, you know what, we have a lot of pain in my lower molar. The lockdown's been there for the last 6 months. I think I really need to come in now. Is it safe? Now, I think for somebody who's not practiced for 4 or 5 months, it is very lucrative to simply say, yes, absolutely, it is safe. Come on in, and the patient will walk in. Now, that's what a good businessman would do. But we are not businessmen, we are doctors, and there is a difference. I will tell my patient, yes, we've taken all these precautions for your safety. We haven't had a COVID case in the hospital in an X amount of time. However, the risk does exist, and that's your risk. Now, when you tell the patient this truth, you know what? Every patient knows there's a risk. He just wants to hear it from you. What do you feel about it? And if you tell him the truth, trust me, he trusts you more. There is no fight, there is no strife, there is no miscommunication, there is no breach of faith, breach of trust. So I think whether it's COVID or non-COVID, communication in any form is an absolute go-to thing.
Thank you, Dr. Agam. Moving to the next question. What's your take on dentistry in general now? How do you see dentistry doing in these times and a little later, say post COVID? Lot of bad individuals, lot of mess, lot of miscommunications. What would be your say on this?
I think it's a great time to practice dentistry, and I say that not in terms of numbers. I understand the number of patients have gone down, and for anybody who's hearing me from every segment of dentistry here, trust me, we are all in the same boat. It doesn't matter if you had a 50,000 rupee month of practice or you had a 10 lakh rupee month of practice. Uh, Trust me, we're all the same. Because when you've had a break of 6 months and patients suddenly realize that they can, well, not go to a dentist and still live, that's a bad precedent to start with. But having said that, I believe this is a good time for dentistry, primarily because with the reduced number of patients, again, Ruben, we're talking of silver linings over here. In a game of poker, you play the cards that you are dealt. You have to play that hand. I believe that this gives us time to sit down. It gives us time to ponder over the things that we've done. A lot of things which I'm an evidence-driven dentist. Everything that I do in my practice is pure evidence. E-education is all about evidence. It's my opinion does not count. What I say, what I feel, what I believe, what I think does not matter. What matters is the evidence that I can give you to support what I am saying. So this is a good time to sit back and say, you know what, we've been practicing in a particular way, but the evidence suggests otherwise. Can we change ourselves? A small example, we all know about the rubber dam. Rubber dams have been there for almost 100 years. We've all our 5 years of graduation, 3 years of post-graduation, and whatever advanced training you've had after that have established that rubber dams work. But how many of us actually use it? I think barely 5% of dentists in the country. This is a good time for you to up those skills and start using them, because when you had an excuse back then, I have 10 patients in a day, I don't have the time for a rubber dam. But you know what? Now you have 2 patients in a day. Now you have the time. All that you lack is the will. So I think this is a good time for dentistry. One should strike away all the wrong things we've done, turn the page, clean the slate, and start off with something new and something better. I think that's a positive messaging that should come out of this pandemic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agam. My next question to you would be to address to all the endodontists out there, in India and everyone who's watching us from all across the globe. Tell us about the very basic armamentarium that one can get to start their endodontic practice tomorrow itself. Do you think all the fancy products that are being marketed, displayed, are they of really importance, at least in the endodontics domain?
I'll answer that in 2 ways. I'll answer that one from the perspective of COVID. So when it comes to this is an ion exchanger, this is a negative ion exchanger, this is a positive ion exchanger, this is a fan, this is a ceiling fan, this is a cooler. I mean, every single thing. I mean, I've actually seen reports where the smoke generators in discotheques were being marketed as sanitizers for the clinic. And we've seen that happen, right? It's a pandemic of misinformation, like I said. As far as those products are concerned, I would suggest that you go through the evidence, see if it actually works, and then invest. Don't invest out of fear. But when it comes to your endodontic gadgets, your endodontic armamentarium, I will suggest that yes, a good quality instrument goes a long way in the outcome that you can give to your patient. So yes, while keeping your budget in front of you, I will suggest invest in good materials. Rather than buying 5 less expensive, low quality materials, I would rather buy 2 high quality ones and then build it up from there. I remember a time when I was starting my practice and I had to invest in an X-ray unit, and I had to invest in a sensor for the intraoral radiography. As an endodontist, those fine whites and blacks and grays really make a difference to me diagnostically. I have to look at the intricate details of the tooth. I had the choice between going for something which was costing me 1 lakh versus something which cost me 2. I weighed my options. I knew it was a huge hit to my budget, but I decided to go for the one which gave me a higher resolution. 5 years down the line, I'm extremely happy. What I used to look at in X-rays 11 years back when I started practice versus when I look at them today is a huge difference, and it makes a difference clinically. So yes, if you had to start your practice tomorrow and you had nothing, I will say buy an endomotor because you can't work with hand instruments anymore. Contrary to what a lot of people will say, I can give you tons of literature that support otherwise. So start off with an endomotor. You must have an apex locator. An electronic apex locator is an absolute necessity. It is not an endodontist's luxury anymore. We have enough evidence published over the last 5-6 years to know that your x-rays show you nothing when it comes to working length. You need an apex locator, and then of course everything else can be slowly built around. So these two are an absolute go-to, and of course the rubber dam. I cannot overemphasize that.
Let's say, for example, tomorrow there is a patient who was COVID positive, who's been recovered, walks into your clinic for an endo treatment. What would be your protocol? Would you treat that patient?
Yes, I will treat the patient, but I will first take a history. In fact, before that, and this should be a practice for everyone really post-COVID, the patient wouldn't be walking into my practice first. The patient would talk to me on the phone. The whole idea of doctors being pricey and not available on the phone is a bad habit. I don't know where it came from or where it started. Talk to your patients. Give them time. In that phone triage, in that phone conversation that I'm having with my patient, I will take the history. When was he COVID positive? When did his symptoms start? What was the line of treatment for COVID? And after his negative, once he's already negative, I will wait those 2 weeks, which is 25 days to 28 days from your symptoms, which scientifically I know is the time when his viral shedding is going to be negligible or zero, is when I will call him in. So all I need to do is not create a fuss about it. Just ask him the timeline. If he says, you know what, I turned negative a week ago, I'll say, you know what, if it's not an emergency, sure, come back a week later. And I will definitely treat him. So all I need to know is two things. One, the actual history. And that will only happen when you talk to the patient. If you already end up with that fearful face, oh my God, he's COVID positive, there's a stigma there, how do I treat him? You are automatically making the patient shell away from you. He's not going to give you a history. He's going to lie about half the things on the chair, and you don't want that happening. So be very open with your patient, and trust me, patients understand. Patients are as fearful of the disease as you are. So I think that open communication channel, take that history, understand the disease, and after that, most certainly treat him. You must.
What is your advice to all the worried individuals, once again from the dental fraternity, who are really, really worried? They see that there is no future here. So what would be your take on that?
I'll see the worry is legitimate in terms of the disease. The worry is not so great as far as the scope or the future of dentistry is concerned, because you have to understand that at the end of the day, healthcare is perhaps the only industry which does not have recession. At the end of the day, people unfortunately will fall ill. At the end of the day, you have to take responsibility for treating them, because if you won't, who will? So no, it's a blip. I give you that. I'm not saying things are as rosy as what they used to be. But then that is a time, like I said, to reorganize ourselves, change our business plans. If you had a mass practice where you were relying upon numbers, try changing yourself to a class practice where you charge more, deliver a better service, spend a greater amount of time for a lesser number of patients. That way you will start realizing that, despite the lesser number, you're still making the same kind of money. It does boil down to financials at the end of the day, because for somebody to pay the rent, for somebody to pay for that AC running, and for somebody to pay for that assistant, you are an employer at the end of the day. Even a practice of one, you are an employer. You will have at least one assistant, and you are responsible for that family as well. So I think you just need to change your business model when it comes to the practice, and the future of dentistry is still bright, because the disease is not going anywhere, your skills are not going anywhere, and your need to society is not going anywhere. COVID
Thank
or
you,
no
Dr.
COVID.
Raghav. I'm sorry, please carry
Yeah,
on.
sure. Yeah. I mean, COVID or
All
no
right.
COVID doesn't change.
All right, we move to the next question. Very important question, and I think no one can be better than you to answer to that question. What would be your message to the students who wish to pursue endodontics as their field of practice post graduation?
Ruben, I'm the very wrong person to ask this because I'm highly biased towards endodontics. You know, when I was doing my post grad, I always used to think endo and then the rest of the world.
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
unapologetic about it. I love what I do. I absolutely love what I do. But on a very serious note, I think endo practically makes a lot of sense. I remember a mentor of mine who sat me down. So I'll tell you what. I got into graduation by choice. I wanted to be a maxillofacial surgeon. My father's a plastic surgeon, and all growing through, it was all about facial aesthetics for me. I got into dentistry electively because the idea was 5 years of graduation, 3 years of post graduation in maxillofacial surgery, followed by a fellowship in plastic surgery along with my father, and I was good to go. That's how I got into dentistry. That's how the story started. 5 years into it, in my internship, I had a mentor of mine who sat me down. He's like, why do you want to be a maxillofacial surgeon? And I have nothing against surgery, trust me. Some of my finest friends are maxillofacial surgeons. I said, you know what, there's passion there, and then there's that whole adrenaline of surgery itself, and there are fractures, and there are carcinomas, and all the big terms that excite a young graduate. Then he said, you know what do you want at the end of the day? How does a patient coming to you in pain and you taking 2 hours and sorting out that pain for good, how does that sound? I was like, well, that sounds good. That sounds like something that I would want. Like, how would you want to have a faster turnaround time when you did this? I said, yeah, that's even better. He's like, well, then the way to go is endodontics. So that's how I got pushed towards endodontics, and I got into my 3 years residency as an endodontist. And I think 3 years you just fall in love with it. So yes, for anybody who wants to pursue endodontics, I think it's a great way to go. From a practical perspective, 7 out of 10 patients in your practice will be in pain, which is the main reason, especially in an Indian population, that patients come to the practice. And if it's pain, it means it's either a cavity, which is restorative dentistry, which is your major, or it's going to be a root canal, which is endodontics. So even from that perspective, 7 out of 10 patients of your practice are your patients. You don't need to call in someone else to handle them. So it makes sense even from a practical perspective. And of course, the amount of research we've seen in endo today, I started endo all about removing the pulp, removing stuff from the root canal. Today, I am all about preserving and regenerating all of it. So in the last 10 years, we have seen so much change. I wouldn't be surprised if 20, 30 years down the line, it is an endodontist who finally gives you a new tooth regeneration. I think it's going to come from endo. That's the direction in which we are heading. So yeah, hands down, if I had to choose and do it all over again, it would be endo.
Wow, that shows how passionate, how in love you are with endo, and I wish you really a lot of luck to everything that you've been doing, sir. If given the opportunity to propose for a change in the dental curriculum, what changes would you like to see? You and I,
Uh,
we both know that it's obsolete, and most of our speakers also said that, unfortunately, which is not a good sign, which is not a good news. What, according to you, should be the changes that you would like to see?
I don't know how do I answer that question without not being politically incorrect, and how do I sidestep a few landmines here in answering that question and not ruffle a lot of wrong feathers the wrong way. But okay, let me try and answer that question very objectively. Uh, I believe a lot of stuff about our education system is good. Let me begin with a positive note. I have had the opportunity of interacting with a lot of educators from the US, from the UK. Of course, we are radically different when it comes to dental education. But for example, one thing amazing about our way of teaching, especially in the postgraduate curriculum, is the amount of exposure to patients that we have. A postgraduate, I mean, I ended up doing about what, 600, 700 root canals in my entire postgraduation. Compare that to somebody in the US, 100, 200, maybe not more than that, the quality ones. So there's a lot of exposure coming from our side, and it makes sense. But when it comes to changes, I do believe that, as you said, it's not obsolete. I think endodontics, especially if I speak for my discipline, is changing at a very rapid rate. Ruben, I've been an educator, I've been a speaker for the last almost 9 years now. What I taught 6 months back in a lecture So, okay, I'll give another example. September 2019, I went to Bangladesh and I was there for 4 days and I lectured there for 4 days. January 2020, I was back. I had to change almost half my slides because a lot of what I taught in September 19 did not hold true in January 20. That's the rate at which we are evolving. I think when it comes to our education system, one must leave room for that change, and that change must come from the teachers. The students must be given the free hand to explore that change, and I think it should be a two-way learning experience rather than a one-way thing. It shouldn't be teacher to student. It should be a dynamic interaction, which does happen in the West, and that is, I think, that is something that we should be adopting in our education system as well.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Agam. I think it was wonderful interacting with you. And now it's time for me to ask you a million-dollar question. And that is for the wonderful initiative that you've taken, that is e-education. It's time for us for you to do the honors and to tell us in detail, since we have a lot of wonderful people join us live, tell us a little in detail what e-education is before I propose the wonderful schemes that you have from e-education. Please.
uh I think E is my baby, if that's the right way of putting it. That's the way I'm nurturing it. E was conceived as an idea about 2 years back. Uh, it was very fluid when we started. We didn't really know what we wanted to do with it because I'd been teaching for a very long time and I'm very passionate about teaching. I think one thing that I've been missing all this while has been to stare eye to an audience of 250 people and talk about endodontics. We've only been able to do it through this little tiny webcam of my Mac, and it's not the same experience. But then I realized that the world is changing and it had to go online. And I realized that there is so much content available online. So, Ruben, let me ask you one question. And I want you to answer it very, very honestly, okay? Not because I'm here on the other side of the screen. If I gave you a choice of going to a lecture versus the choice of going to a movie, where would you go?
100% movie.
I would be very disappointed if you said you wanted to go to a lecture. So I think that's what E is all about. I think we've had too much content where there's classroom teaching. Agam Bhatnagar standing in front of a screen. There's a tooth over there, and I'm drawing lines over there, and I'm talking about the tooth. I think nobody wants that. What do we want? I think one thing that the pandemic has done to us is, I pick this up, that's Netflix, and I'm binge watching, right? That's what we've been doing for the last 4, 5, 6 months. Now e-education is all about endodontics that you can binge watch. So we shot e-education on the beaches of Goa. We shot them in world famous monuments. We shot them outdoors. We shot them in airplanes. We shot E at airports. Everything which is not textbook blackboard teaching is e-education. So E is entertainment, E is endodontics, E is education, E is exquisite, E is something exclusive, but most importantly, E is evidence. So imagine evidence-driven endodontics shot in 4K like a movie, delivered in 12-minute episodes. So 12 minutes is shorter than a Friends episode. I mean, we can sit through Friends, right? That's about 20 minutes. So this is 12. Coming to you series after series, just the way Netflix streams. That is what e-education is all about. So I think that's what I think that's the change I want to bring. And education should not be about blackboard teaching. Endodontics was not meant to be taught in a classroom.
Wow, that introduction to e-education itself is like a pitch in front of investors. If there had to be an investor here, I'm sure he would have definitely want an equity, probably for a 1 million deal on return. I wish you luck, Dr. Agam, because it sounds so fascinating. I am definitely not from a dental background, at least now that I am in Dentist Channel, passionately into the dental field, but so mesmerizing, so fascinating of what you've been doing. So endodontics everywhere, that is the key education, and I'm sure you'll be doing a good job. If you could tell us a little in detail about who can be a student of e-endodontics, is it the
I
from
think
the endodontics center, or is it everybody who can be a part of the initiative?
I said a lot of words when it comes to E. I think I forgot one word, and that E is everybody. uh,
Everybody.
everybody can join in. So, which means if you're a clinician, we have something known as the season and series. So it's like a Netflix series, 10 episodes. You pick up one topic and we, shoot it like a movie, and we teach you endodontics. In fact, there's a very interesting trailer that we've put up on the website that actually shows what we're talking about. So if you're a clinician and you have 12 minutes at the end of the day and you have a smartphone, that's all you need. If you're a student, if you're somebody who's giving an undergrad exam, you're a BDS second year, third year, final year student, we have something and it's coming out over the next 2-3 months called the ebook. Imagine just Ruben, we've all seen Harry Potter, right? Harry Potter opens the book and there are people flying inside in that chapter, and it's a dynamic textbook. The ebook is a movie of your textbook coming out alive in front of you. So it'll be practically not reading a book. You'll have to watch the movie, and that's how you can get through your entire BDS final year endodontic curriculum. If you're an educator, we bring down the highest level of research. I'm talking of articles which were published in May, June 2020, August, September 2020. We bring that and simplify them to ways in which an educator can understand and then teach further to their students. So right from an undergrad down to an educator, through all the postgraduates, I think E is for everybody, and that's how it's been structured. There are season and series. If you have less time, if you're a clinician, there's the e-book for the students. There's the research section for the advanced learner, and then there is the case-based learning called the case files. If you have no time at all, but you still want to learn, click on one case. You will see from the start to the end and all the evidence surrounding it. So E is for everybody.
Is for everybody, and I'm sure you would. I mean, there would be a lot of people who would want to know about e-education, ladies and gentlemen. I would love to let you know that you can always feel free to log on to www.education.in. You will have all your answers covered. Ladies and gentlemen, I would also like to happily tell you that e-education is offering a COVID-19 series on endodontics, which is definitely free for everybody. Dr. Agam is doing a wonderful job by providing a lot of resources. I must comment the wonderful job Dr. Agam is doing. All that you have to do is you have to register, which is once again free. It's a 7-part series that talks about evidence on the disease as well as takes the dentist through modifications needed for everyday operations. So if you'd love to know more about the COVID-19 series on endodontics, please once again log on to www.education.in. Also, very happy to tell you, Dr. Agam is also, he's informed about the importance of a rubber dam. And there will be a series on rubber dams that will be coming out soon for the members of the education. It's a series of 6 episodes that handholds the clinician in using a rubber dam. So once again, if you would love to know more about it, Dr. Agam is all yours. He would be more than happy to help you. With that, Dr. Agam, we come to the end of a wonderful session. Once again, on behalf of Team DentistChannel.Online, I'd like to thank you. You're such a wonderful speaker. Of course, you're a wonderful clinician. About that, you sounded more like a TEDx speaker, a person who's pitching a deal in front of investors, and above all, a person who would love to share his knowledge. And I think you have a plethora of everything under that one single roof, which is you. Thank you so much, Dr. Agam. It was such a pleasure to have you, to host you this evening. I look forward, Team Dentist Channel looks forward to having you for many, many, many more interactive sessions, and definitely for a wonderful collaboration. Thank you so much, Dr. Agam.
Thanks, Ruben. Thank you so much. But I must say this before you actually log off. Having somebody like you around, I think it's such a huge boost to anybody's confidence. So thank you so much for all those kind words, and thank you so much for having me over here. I think what you're doing here with Unlock Dentistry, bringing people from every stream, every branch of dentistry, and actually having this no banner conversation so that everybody can actually just feel free. I'm sure a lot of people must be sending you those live queries as well. But I think what you're doing is phenomenal, and I wish you all the very best. And I hope this Unlock Dentistry series is the dawn that we really need in the darkest hour. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Agam, once again. Good evening. Have a good weekend. And to everybody who's watching us live, good evening, and have a great weekend ahead. Goodbye and see you soon. Thank you.